Whew. Hello. It's been a hell of a morning, but today we are looking at this album here, a 2000 album from a band that is pretty polarizing, although maybe polarizing isn't the right word, because polarizing suggests that there's kind of almost like a 50-50 split between, where I'd say it's much more in the category of hate than love, and that is Limp Bizkit. Now, there was a time, which I'm sure most of you will remember, when Limp Bizkit were a pretty huge band. We use that term biggest band in the world, and that's a kind of I guess subjective in some ways because how do you measure that really? I guess album sales is one, but it's not something that a band holds for years at a time or very rarely. I guess the Beatles kind of did in the 60s, but now in this time in the 90s through the 2000s, I guess nowadays music is so diffuse that it's hard to pin on to one particular artist. But anyway, I'd say for a short period between 99 2000, there could be an argument made that Limp Bizkit were the biggest band in the world. They came out with Significant Other in 99, and that had like Nookie and a few other songs that I can't remember off the top of my head. And then this came just over a year later, so they really tried to capitalize on the popularity that they had by only having about a 1 year gap between Significant Other and this album, the Chocolate Starfish, and the Hotdog flavored water, which, whatever way you feel about Limp Bizkit, is among one of the stupidest album titles you're ever likely to come across. Um, so you can see this is secondhand. Excuse me. I got this last year. You can see there the date actually, the 25th of October 2022, for $1. And you can see the original owner of this bought this in Great Britain because the currency is pounds, 13 pounds 99 pence from HMV. HMV is a record store. I don't know which countries it was in. Certainly it was in Britain. It was in New Zealand in the late 80s, early 90s, and then kind of changed names a bunch of times. Might have been in America, Canada. I'm not exactly sure. But you can see that's 14 pounds. That would be about roughly $30 New Zealand in today's money. And whatever that is in American money. Sorry, I can't do those third way calculations. But not cheap, is it? Really? Not cheap at all. Because that's $30. $30 in 2000 is a lot different to $30 now. $30 now is still not a little amount of money, but $30 back then was a lot. Excuse me. And you also see that it has a bonus CD. It's a 2 CD dealie. You have the actual CD itself, and then it's one of these ones, a bonus CD, and you can almost be guaranteed that the bonus CD is not worth your time. But we'll look at that in a second. This was produced by Terry Date. It seems like we talk about Terry. Well, I talk about Terry Date about once a week for the last month because he seems to pop up a lot. He did the Pantera one we looked at. He did something, a Pearl Jam one, I think. Oh no, Bad Motorfinger, and many others. Anyway, I will say that the production on this doesn't sound like, I criticize Terry Date's production on Pantera and Deftones as being a bit thin sometimes, but I'll say on this, it doesn't have that same complaint. I would say this actually doesn't actually sound like a Terry Date production at all. And that might be because Limp Bizkit have got a much fuller sound due to the presence of the DJ. And that kind of fleshes out the sound and maybe camouflages any kind of thinness in the guitars. But I think Wes Borland also has a decent tone, quite a chunky guitar tone. And yeah. Anyway, excuse me, I just ate a sandwich with hot sauce and now my nose is a bit runny, so I'm sniffing it a bit. Um, so if we look at just the track listing on this one, so they got the introduction, as they often do on Limp Bizkit albums. Then you got Hot Dog, which is the one where he says the F word a bunch of times. I think it's also the one where he uses the refrain from some Nine Inch Nails song. You want to F me like an animal. You want to hurt me from the inside. Something perfect drug. Nothing you'll do will get you closer to me. So it's actually quite corny, but he was like using a number of Nine Inch Nails song titles and lyrics to make up the chorus of the song. But he did that because Trent Reznor had made negative comments about him shortly after the Woodstock 99 fiasco, whatever you want to call it, concert, festival. And a lot of people, yeah, I'm just kind of moving between things here, talking about the music, but also talking about how people, even at their popularity, there was a large segment of people who didn't like Limp Bizkit, specifically didn't like Fred Durst. I think actually people had a lot of time for Wes Borland, and I think the rhythm section, Sam Rivers and John Otto, actually pretty fucking solid, pretty good. There's a lot of stuff I've heard of them. Apparently, Sam Rivers, the bassist, was trained as a jazz bassist. Like he went to some school for jazz bass, where we had some teacher or something. And I always thought, yeah, the drummer was pretty good, pretty inventive, and had a pretty solid beat. And here's me trying to describe drumming. It's always a fucking a struggle, isn't it? I like his drumming. I never thought, oh, this is boring drumming or shit drumming or anything. I think it seems like a good drummer, like a good solid rock drummer. But it was Fred Durst that people seemed to have a problem with, and he didn't help himself in any way, did he? He always came across in this period as a bit of a prat, as a bit of a dick. Why? I don't know. Something like just the things he did. He rapped in the songs as well, and his flow, if you want to call it that, was pretty white boy level. if you want to judge rap on that kind of scale of going from, if we say 10 is what, J. Cole or I can wonder Eminem, even though he's white as well, isn't he? Down to the worst of the worst. Fred Durst is pretty bad. And so maybe that didn't help him. Also, he kind of acted like he was black, but in an authentic way. You know, some people have a problem with that. And again, this is an American thing because there's a lot more political and historical context to the race relations of stuff which don't exist in other countries or don't exist in the same way. But when some white guy comes in acting like a black guy and trying to talk like a black guy, it comes off as very inauthentic sometimes. At least in Eminem's case, apparently he had some background that, you know, he grew up around African American in Detroit and had a difficult childhood, whereas Fred Durst, maybe that wasn't so true. Anyway, and I think just some people didn't like their music anyway. It was like, you know, people didn't like new metal already. It was by 2000 there was a fair number of people who thought it was bullshit, and especially like true metal fans thought it was commercialized crap and so on and so forth. Anyway, the other songs we got My Generation, Full Nelson, My Way. Now, My Way is probably one of my favorite Limp Bizkit songs. It has a kind of quiet, heavy dynamic, and quite a. It uses a sample from, what's his name? Is it Eric B and Rakim? Is it Eric B? Check Out My Melody. You know, that classic hip hop song. Or they use that sample throughout, but it's a bit different than a typical Limp Bizkit song, because Limp Bizkit songs either are kind of bro heavy, like I guess for example like Full Nelson or Boiler are kind of bro heavy, or pop metal like maybe Hot Dog, My Generation, or Take a Look Around, or Nookie, or things like that, to ones that incorporate a lot more hip hop, like I'll Get Your Groove On. Is that one of them? or one of the Rolands, the urban assault vehicle Roland. I think that's the one that's got Method Man and Redman on it. And Together Now on Significant Other. Whereas My Way is kind of doesn't fit into any of those molds of their songs, and it's kind of a bit different. It's a bit like the song on Significant Other. I think it's Rearranged. Do 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 do. That one with that bass line. That's now I think that's got the same dynamic, doesn't it? It's kind of like got a calm, flowing verse, and then it kind of breaks into a kind of a big rah rah chorus. What else can we say about? Oh, so it's got the two versions of Roland. So there's the air raid vehicle and the urban assault vehicle. I'm pretty sure air raid vehicle is the rock version. The one on the video, they're playing on top of a skyscraper, and I think Ben Stiller's in the video. And then the urban assault vehicle is the hip hop version, which is, like I said, got guests from Redman and I think Method Man and maybe someone else. Well, actually, we'll have a look at that. So it's not a bad album, really. I guess it depends on how you feel about Limp Bizkit. If you don't like Limp Bizkit, then you'll probably think it's absolutely fucking awful. But I've never really got into the whole hate Limp Bizkit thing. I was never the biggest fan to start with, though, to be honest. So it's got thanks from the band. So it's got little kind of, I guess those are the lyrics. Yes, the lyrics are very small, aren't they? That's John Otto, and that's Sam Rivers. Some band shots. That's DJ Lethal. So of course they had a DJ, which was kind of one of the first bands to kind of add the DJ to the lineup. Then there was I guess Linkin Park came after them. They had like kind of a DJ and a keyboard. Did they? Or did just the DJ? I'm thinking of Slipknot had a DJ and a keyboardist. Anyway, Slipknot. There was a period there where Deftones, Frank was just a DJ. Now he's kind of more keyboardist, kind of atmospheric keyboards in the background. And then there's Fred. I'm trying to see if I can see any mention of the artist featured on. No, of course not. Why would there be something that I need there to be? That's kind of like an insert card advertising the release of the single. Now, what is on the bonus disc? Make sure we have a look on the back. It's easier. On the front is that's not going to come through on the front. Don't worry. We'll start here. One, Crushed, and Faith. They're both. I'm pretty sure. Certainly, Faith is from $3 Bill Y'all. I think Crushed is as well. Counterfeit was $3 Bill Y'all, but this is the Lethal Dose mix. Faith CD-ROM video, Nookie CD-ROM video, Rearranged CD-ROM video, End Together CD-ROM video. So we got, okay, it's actually not that bad. When this came out in 2000, that actually would have been a pretty good ad. You got 1, 2, 3, 4 videos of their biggest songs. Someone outside, I don't know if you can hear that. Hang on, I'm just going to pause this. Someone outside shouting instructions to his co-worker. You got their videos, and then you've got 2 songs from their earliest albums. Faith, had been their biggest single and was kind of the song that broke them. And then you got one remix, which is better than. If there's one thing I don't like, is a bonus CD full of remixes, because very, very, very rarely are the remixes worth anything. Worth your time to listen to. Often it just sounds like a song with like kind of a hip hop beat put into it, or kind of maybe cutting the main vocal melody up a little bit or something like that. I'd say there's a few exceptions to that rule. Like, for example, there's a very good Blur remix album that I like some of the remixes on that. But in general, the other thing worse than a bonus CD of remixes is a bonus CD of live versions. Don't bother. That's what I'd say to the record company. I don't want to hear the live version. I don't want to hear the song worse with crowd noise and fucking live sounds around it. That adds nothing to me. Like, I see with a lot of these 25th or 30th year anniversary box sets. Like, I was looking at the In Utero or the Nevermind one. Or was it? No, maybe it was I was looking at some grunge era box set that had come out in the last 5 years. and it had like 4 or 5 discs. I was thinking, oh shit, that's probably going to have some good stuff on it. How are they going to fill 5 CDs of bonus material? 1 CD is the album. I guess they got maybe 1 CD of unreleased, like kind of demo tracks or something, which I don't mind them. But what I saw is that 2 or 3 of the CDs were all live. Just the same songs again and again. Live in Amsterdam, live in fucking Rio de Janeiro, live in Los Angeles. It's like, what a waste of time and a waste of money. I would much rather hear just demos or unreleased tracks, even just jams. Anything, any kind of insight into the musical creation is a lot more interesting than stupid live tracks. Anyway, that's my rant. Sorry. So yeah, I don't know what else there is to say about this. This album was huge. It went #1. It sold hundreds of thousands of copies in its first week. It went on to sell probably close to 10 million worldwide, I would guess. But it was their last big album, because after this, Wes Borland left and they did that, what was it, Results May Vary, or was it? I can't actually remember because I didn't actually own it, but that didn't do it anywhere as well. Results May Vary. That didn't do anywhere near as well, and by then the wheels had fallen off the new metal wagon, and all of those bands were struggling with record sales, even like Korn and whoever else you want to add to that. So yeah, it was a big album, but I'd say that it was also an album that, like I said, a lot of people didn't like. It just cemented the reasons why they didn't like Limp Bizkit, and they wouldn't change anyone's mind. It's not as though this going from Significant Other to this, that someone would go, oh, I didn't like their old stuff, but this thing's so inventive. It's basically the same stuff, but just kind of rejigged or turned up. It's Limp Bizkit. Now, I saw them. Excuse me for a second. Here I am. I saw them. They came over here and played a music festival in the summer of 2001. So that's summer, Southern Hemisphere. So that was January 2001. So that was about a few months after they released this. And I'd say even by this time, the Worm was starting to determine their popularity, and they were starting to drop off a bit. And there was certainly a lot of hate, because I remember at this festival earlier in the day, a lot of bands were on stage bad-mouthing Limp Bizkit, saying these fucking guys suck. Or one of my friends, actually, he had a band and he played in one of the very early sets, one of the opening morning sets at the festival. And I remember he said something on stage like, Limp Bizkit isn't a metal band, such and such. I can't remember exactly what. But anyway, they played the closing set, and it was the Big Day Out Festival. Actually, after they played in New Zealand, they went to Australia, played Sydney, Melbourne, and unfortunately, very, very sadly, is that they had someone in the audience died at their Sydney show, a young girl. I think she was 15 years old. She was crushed. And so that kind of left a bad taint on that tour and the band down here. But I'll say is their show here in Auckland they put on a pretty fucking great show. And as much as even I didn't really want to like them, it was a pretty overwhelming. You just got got caught up in it. It was like it was kind of like one of the last memories I have of one of those kind of big shows. I can't really explain what I mean by big shows, because like a lot of the bands I see are more smaller sized bands that wouldn't be able to fill out kind of a stadium like that, like Limp Bizkit did. But this was like a massive crowd. Everyone was kind of into it. It's a lot of kind of like audience participation and like, you say this, I say this, all that kind of bullshit. But he's a good front man. As much as people fucking hate his guts, I think he's a pretty good front man. And I only have really good memories of that show. I then saw them again about 12 or 13 years later in South Korea. They played on a festival bill in Seoul, the same festival as Metallica and Muse and Iggy and the Stooges, Rocket from the Crypt, a few others. But anyway, by this time, 2013, I hadn't listened to Limp Bizkit purposefully, intentionally for years. And so I wanted to get close to the front of the stage for Metallica and Muse. So I was almost kind of thinking, because Limp Bizkit were playing on this other side stage, much smaller stage. And I was almost not going to go see them, but I thought, no, I'll go see them for old time's sakes. And again, I was actually blown away by how good they were. They played it. It was still daylight hours. It was kind of about, just before sunset, so the sun was kind of going down. But I thought they were pretty great. And there was one particular point of the show where they played what's the one I said I like? Number 5? Oh, My Way. They played My Way, and it's like I said, I think it's got quite like I don't know. I'm not gonna say you don't associate the word beautiful with Limp Bizkit, but the kind of parts of that song, like the instrumental part, where I think are quite pretty and beautiful. And there's this one particular time the sun was going down, and just in my life personally, a lot of stuff had kind of happened in the 10 years leading up to this time, and I was kind of in a good space in my life in 2013, and it was like kind of like an emotional like feeling, like the song from my youth that I hadn't listened to in about 12 years. And I was singing this band that, a part of my youth, and the sun was going down. I was in this foreign country, and I was kind of like, it was quite a beautiful memory I have of that band and that song. So you can't ask for more than that, can you? From a band, from an artist. So yeah, Limp Bizkit. If you like them, I'm sure you know this album back to front. If you don't like them, you probably hate them and think, why am I talking about them? But yeah, thanks for watching.